Hello, I'm Francesco Manenti, and I'm happy to welcome you to discussion of our paper, Accessibility of Graphicscores, Design and Evaluation of Tactile Supports for Blind People, with my co-author, Francesco Ardan Dal. Our paper presents the outcome of a musical workshop held in Brescia, Italy, with the support of Unione Italiana dei Ciechi e degli Ipovedenti. We collected feedback and suggestions about design, creation, and improvements of tactile scores, and evaluated their effectiveness and practical implications during side-by-side study sessions, rehearsals, and a final concert based on 3 pieces from the historical repertoire. Graphicscores became popular around the 50s thanks to the work of Early Brown, who considered standard notation as a relatively inefficient and incomplete transcription of the infinite totality which a composer traditionally hears. Other noticeable examples come from several composers from the second half of the 20th century and many from nowadays, also taking on the function of descriptive scores often applied to computer music. Graphic scores are a form of musical notation highly influenced by visual art, providing indications generally through the use of geometric shapes or abstract symbols, along with several preliminary instructions. Therefore, blind and visually impaired people cannot access graphic scores in their native form. This motivated our research on tactile supports. The literature regarding music notation for BVI people mostly deals with the direct transcription of common Western music notation into music braille code, while forms of traditional notations belonging to non-Western cultures are still clearly underrepresented. There is a profound lack of research oriented towards the accessibility of non-conventional notations, so we aim to encourage debate on possible solutions to fill this gap. The experience was structured in the form of a 4-day in-person workshop hosted by UICI in Brescia, Italy. During the last day, we organized an informal concert based on 3 historical scores analyzed during the workshop in order to provide the participants with practical perspectives. The 4 attendants were all volunteers, all of them were blind from birth, 3 of them were professional musicians. During the workshop, we worked on 3 graphic scores from the historical repertoire, a selection of 6 pages from Treatise by Cornelius Cardew, December 52 by Early Brown, and Ginkgo by John Ruskin. In order to allow the participants to access the graphic repertoire, we relied on 3D printed supports representing the original scores, which they can touch and explore freely. The score of Treatise is composed of black, mostly geometric elements on a white background and an empty double staff line on the bottom of the page. Given its geometric nature, in our rendering we simply extruded the various elements. In December 52, for one or more instruments and/or sound-producing media, the score shows 28 rectangles of different width and length, defining musical parameters such as pitch, dynamics, duration, and proximity. In our design, the sense of depth was rendered through 5 different thicknesses. The score of Ginkgo, for various instrumentation, is composed of a wooden piece with inlay lines surrounded by 5 ginkgo leaves with dots and lines leaning their stem to the wooden element. A 6th leaf lays on the bottom of the score, disconnected from the central piece. In this case, we slightly simplify the drawing, reporting the leaves' contour without external textures. During the first day, we provided a brief introduction about graphic scores. We also listened and analyzed some historical pieces from the literature, aiming to bridge the gap between their familiar repertoire and the new one. We discussed several initial 3D printed score prototypes, asking the participants for direct feedback and suggestion in order to improve our design. All the participants agree on the A5 format with 0.6mm bright standard extruded elements based on their daily habits. The second meeting was focused on the exploration of the tactile supports, identifying common problems which can occur and possible solutions according to the participants' experience. They suggested that every design should consider the characteristic on the original score. In December 52, for example, larger incremental thicknesses of 1mm were necessary to compensate for the rarefaction of the elements. During the 1-month break between the second and the third meeting, we finalized our design and provided the musicians with personal copies of each scores, and guide files containing indications from the composer were present, along with examples and suggestions for their interpretation, so they could study individually at their pace. We kept in contact with them, providing support for their study and discussing strategies for memorizing and performing. We also organized individual rehearsals in order to help them to be more confident with the new repertoire. In the third meeting, musicians rehearsed the piece together. We simply guided the executions and stimulated the discussion regarding strategies they used during the individual study, encountered difficulties, and musical ideas emerged from the scores, with particular focus on the use of the provided supports. Finally, on the last day, we had a general rehearsal and properly set the stage for the concert scheduled for the same evening. We asked the participants for some general remarks on the whole experience, especially about the comparison of the support with traditional paper. All the participants preferred the tactile ones. The reading experience has been evaluated as particularly comfortable and the portability and handling more secure while performing. The participants expressed positive comments towards the supports, defining them as clear and philologically coherent. This was particularly valuable for us as we were interested in preserving the very meaning of these scores as much as possible. The overall opinion on the experience was positive, and all the musicians shared the desire to repeat the experience again. They appreciated the introduction on graphicscores literature and the approach to encourage BVI people accessing this repertoire. The tactile supports were assessed as extremely useful. The participants acknowledged it would not have been possible for them to fully appreciate the proposed repertoire otherwise. The 3D supports also originate curiosity on the possibility of new ways for music transcription, especially in relation to their portability and descriptive scores as high-level piece summaries. We hope that this work can be a starting point to suggest new solutions to make the many facets of the musical experience increasingly accessible for everybody. Thank you for tuning into this presentation. We look forward to hear your thoughts and feedback on this research, and please feel free to ask any question. Thanks again.